Hey everybody, welcome to the lovely EFP Live. We're going to be starting here in just a couple minutes. I started a little late because I was gathering an extra few things for the show and some thoughts. My hardback came in for Knave 2nd edition. I've been looking through it on and off all of today, and I'll be honest, I am really impressed with this. So we're going to dive into this 72-page book and why it should be at your table no matter whatever you're playing. So stay tuned, get a drink, and I'll be kicking us off here in about 4 to 5 minutes.
Dreaming, get me in my feelings. Promises that you never could keep, leaving me defeated. All I need is saying now I want something that I'll never get, but I can't admit that I'm falling back to you. I know I need something that'll never end, but I can't forget that I'm falling back to you.
I'm super excited for this one. There is a lot to talk about, way more than I think people know. This is just kind of me welcoming everybody in. I'm going to do a recording piece towards the end of this where I do like my 20-minute recap or so, or 15-minute recap, and do a breakdown. But I started reading through Knave, and I just got it in the mail, I think earlier this week, but I've had the PDF since February when the Kickstarter launched, and I really didn't know why I wanted it, but I love Ben's stuff on Questing Beast, and I needed to support someone as a content creator because I felt the urge. And then I got the first edition one. I was like, this is really good. And then I got the second edition one, and I'm looking at it in front of me here. And one, the book is kind of formatted how I want to do some stuff. It is a totally different look on how to do game design. And his adventure that he has, that's won a bunch of awards, I think it's Willoughby Hall or Willoughby Hall, has crushed in how to design things as an adventure, which is way up more up my alley, the way he's designed it. So today we're going to look at this. We're going to look at Knave today. Pretty book, I know, collector's edition. And we'll look at the other edition as well. It's thin. It's a journal-sized, really clean, nothing special, just that kind of canvasy, scratchy tone to it. I've already kind of put darts through the whole thing. By the way, if any of you are TTRPG fans, I have been picking up these little metal darts and putting them in my book lately. Big fan of them. So we're not going to use this, okay? We're going to go through the actual PDF, but there is something in here that I wanted to showcase before we dive too deep. This is another one of those companies that understands that you can really make some amazing things in the covers of your book, and it's like everything you need. If I kind of bring it up here a little bit, it should get rid of that glare, but everything's in the front and back of the book. That's it. Everything's here. To book test ASMR. So we're going to be looking over this today, and kind of want to dive into that. As we go through, get your questions together, and I'll put them on screen if there's any good ones from the audience here, or there's some questions that maybe I missed. There's only going to be maybe like a 30-minute look through and like a 15-minute recording. We won't be here real long today. So let's get over to the info. Let's go through all of it, and let's see what we have. And I want to start with the Kickstarter before we do anything else. So this closed a while ago. I have not answered this, but I will later. This is the Knave RPG. This is the traditional. This is the limited edition. For the cost, I wanted the cloth cover because I'm getting ready to print, and I really want some cloth versions. And it's a really clean edition. Price wasn't insane, and the video, if I mute this and play this, you will hear it. But it's just Ben. It's just Ben talking. It's his entire Kickstarter. The whole thing is just him talking about it. And he's done some really amazing stuff. So, besides that, which we know Ben from all of his Questing Beast stuff, this is your edition that you could have bought. And he has some PDFs. Maze Rats is also phenomenal. This is Willoughby, which has won a ton of awards. Clean art, clean cover. I got the patch. I think my patch is over here somewhere. Somewhere over here. I got the patch as well because I love patches. And I love the design. It's clean. It's not quite OSR. It's kind of its own beast. And it has a black and white interior. There's no color. The art's splash pages for the most part. There is some spot art. He immediately gave a free preview out and kind of dives through it. And you can see he's got a lot of people from the TTRPG streaming space, from the Professor Dungeon Master, from Baron, Dave's on here. People really just kind of giving their reviews of it. And I don't think it's as old school as some people are making it out to be. And I think there's a misconception, personally, I think there's a misconception on the idea of what old school Renaissance is in OSR. And there's a way to run it, there's a way books are laid out, and there's a way adventures are done in that category. And anyone who's been playing from 80s into even the 90s, early 90s on up, you know what OSR was back then. It wasn't really quite labeled that, but it's old school Renaissance or old school revival is what that stands for. But this is very different. And I have a really strong statement that when we get into the 20 minutes, when I do the full quick recap kind of thing, 15, 20 minutes, I have a really strong statement. And I'll say it here too. Before we crack this open, I believe that Knave is a must for every fucking table. I think every table should have this book somewhere tableside. Every one of them. And not just for the GM, although I think that's predominantly who's going to use it, but for players as well. And if nothing else, the GM should take, I think it's like the 6th page out of here and hand it to every player, because I think it changes the way players look at tabletop. There's a lot of things that have happened with 5e over the last, what has it been, decade now? 5e and the things that it's trained us to do. Some of it's really good, some of it's bad. Same with OSR. There's some bad stuff in that and good. That's where third-party publishing and indie companies come in and come out with new stuff that break that kind of mold and give us something new. So, let's pull it up. So this is the Kickstarter. I really don't have anything else to show on this. I just wanted to scroll and show you what it is. I'll drop the Kickstarter in here so you can go pick up your copy if you want as well for Knave 2e. This is not sponsored. I did not get this book for free. I picked it up out of my own pocket. But we're going to pull up the PDF. This is the cover to Knave. Real clean, old school feel. Everything in this is bold, 2-column format. Your abilities are what you expect. And I'm going to be 100% with you. I'm not even really here to talk about how to play Knave. I'm not here to tell you what's great about it, how to do things, the mechanics or everything. I want to point out good fucking design. That's what I want to point out. Just design in this. For all my design people who work in tabletop or people who appreciate it when they're reading a book, this guy has nailed some really cool things home. So, for example, anytime there's a page number next to a column and it's hyperlinked, makes me really happy. Take your drink if you're drinking and playing the drinking game. I mentioned hyperlinks. Abilities, checks, combat. Everything is put together in this page. It's kind of a one-page format. And his design for adventures are very similar. Or 2-page spreads is what a lot of them are made for. Because if I open this up into a 2-page spread, just to give you a quick show, this game is kind of meant to be looked at in a 2-page spread format. But I'm going to scroll through it in single because it's easier to do this way. So your abilities and checks and everything are on here. We're all things that we're used to. We all know how to do D20 checks in a game, right? We all know what they're for, but we haven't really talked about the mistakes of 5e. And there's a few things I've already highlighted in here that we're going to talk about as I go through. So item slots is just 10 plus con. It's how much you can carry. The cool thing about it, let me put my highlighter on. The cool thing about it is this. This is damage. When you take damage in this game, you have hit points and you have so many slots, and gear becomes important in a game. 5e, let's be real, gear gets glazed over a lot. It's not something that matters a shit ton. It's something that's like, I have it. How much are you carrying? Like, no one cares about weight at most tables. This is different. Because gear is so prominent and important in survival in this game, you have damage. And on top of having the damage, if you go to a certain point, you start taking damage to your gear slots, which we will get into as we go through this. And that's the direct damage. Basically, as you're going through, if you ever hit a certain amount, direct damage bypasses hit points, adds wounds directly. It deals triple HP damage to creatures that don't have slots, like monsters, so you can kill them quicker. But if the player, you get injuries and they take up item slots. Really cool concept. I think you could take it to any game. You could just say crit does an item slot and they lose an item. All you gotta do is number your slots, right? And it makes players think about their slots being important. Okay. Spellcasting, very simple. It's int, but the thing that is different about this game, and I like this as well, there's not classes the way you would think about D&D and anything really in that OGL category. So spells is a book. Each spell's a book, and each spell takes a slot, and you can use that spell, I think it's once a day if I remember correctly. Point being, you are a spellcaster because of the amount of slots that spellcasting takes. It's not because they're telling you can't wear armor. It's not because they're telling you can't do certain things. It's because they're telling you to be a spellcaster, you need to carry the books to do it. Very different view on spellcasting. Equipment, these are different things. Coins is just kind of like coins in general. They have a better breakdown for how they want money to work in this game. And it just breaks down everything. Very, very transparent. Common questions that always get skipped and are usually in the GM screen is this, the transport. We're only on page 3. Get what I'm saying? I gave you almost the entire game. You get your tables of contents, and this is the introduction, which is, he calls it an old school fantasy role-playing game, right? It's in the tradition of David Wesley or Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, kind of paying homage. I will give credit to Ben. Ben is known for giving credit where credit is due. I believe he has a teacher background, so cite your source is part of this man's bloodline. So it makes me really happy to see him give credit where it should be. I don't think anyone thinks everything on their own is silo that's any good. You're influenced by stuff. He talks about tables. Tables are prominent in this, and he is right. There are a lot of them, but they're not tables like normal. So I know some people in the audience probably remember when tables were everywhere in our tabletop games. And I mean everywhere. So much so that people forgot that tables are to spark interest and to spark ideas. They weren't necessarily there to run your game. And this is really there to help you spark ideas versus ownership of the game through tables. I think you should take almost all tables that way. I also think that if tables take you a while to roll, pre-rolling them in sections where you know they're going to come up, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want it to be wild, you need a little more chaotic moment, roll it with your party. I do that live on stream all the time. I think it's really good advice to have some pre-rolled stuff because flipping through tables does take time. But the guy, the way he set this up, very cool. Here's where I started highlighting in advance, and I realized I need to just stream this. This is where it all started. He breaks down in a 2-page spread the game master's duties and the player's duties. That's right, players. You have a job in tabletop. You have things that you're responsible for besides writing down on your character sheet your hit point damage. And you also have more responsibilities than taking just some minor notes. Like, tracking your inventory when your GM gives you something, and the next session you sit down and you go, what did you give me? I've just stopped telling players. Because the GM is doing so much work, we're just asking the players to write some stuff down once in a while. But he has some really good things. There's a couple points in here I don't 100% agree with, and it's not that they're bad. It's because my style of play is different. That's all. So, create locations to explore. I think this is important. I think when you are creating set pieces for the GM, finding cool places to be, I like to call them scenes, but locations is fine. Find a great map, build around it. Awesome, right? Flesh out supporting cast. This is important. Monsters, NPCs, personalities, goals. These are all things that I feel like get left behind a lot in GM prep because they don't think about it. But when you get to the table, the thing you are most upset about is the fact that you didn't prep any names. You didn't prep an NPC's personality. You didn't prep their secrets. Those things come up and you get salty because you forgot. He's calling you out for it. What I did not agree with, and I marked it in red, is let the players guide the action. I agree with this to a point. Don't plan out the plot for the players to experience. Each session should be a surprise on everyone. And I read this a couple times, and I agree with it in the fact that I prepare a plot web. Right? I prepare a plot web that is made for players to follow, and I highlight the plot web as I'm going through and as they do things. If you want to see more on how I do plot webs than what I do, comment down below now, or if you're watching this after the live event, because I will do something on it. It's something that people are interested in, but I do plotted adventures is what I call them. You can find some of mine over on DriveThruRPG, and I think he means very similar. He's basically saying don't create a narrative so strong that you're telling your players what to do. Let them kind of run the experience. And I will agree, the more you let your players play within the agreement that the table has had for what you're playing, the more skin in the game they have. Keep the game moving. Pacing is everything. A lot of people have learned that, who have learned to stream since COVID. Pacing a actual play is different than pacing a game at the table. But I think that's true just in general. Use common sense. It should be important. Make impartial and constant rulings. This is important. The player should be playing against the world, not against you. Now, I know I play an adversarial GM when I am running something on stream, but I'm really not. I'm for the players. I like the combativeness that comes out on the screen for fun, but I'm always for the players. If I wasn't, I would kill the players all the time. You know what I'm saying? So pretty clean, right? Immerse the players. I agree with this. The little things are important. Then reveal the world. Give the players plenty of information about what's happening around them. I think a lot of GMs don't understand that read out loud text, or text that's italicized in an adventure, is really for you to be able to give, you know, the five senses for a player, since they're not actually there. For example, describing a door when they go, oh yeah, there's a door in front of you. That's not that exciting. But if you say there's a door in front of you, the framework has been redone numerous times as they've repaired this door from the swelling of the water in this dungeon. You can see claw marks on it, or maybe it's not claw marks. Maybe it's knife marks. Without closer investigation, it's hard to tell. And you can see from a distance that the lock area is shiny from abuse. There's a smell of mold, but you don't see any, so they do clean the place. And there is absolutely no sound other than the breathing of you and your companions. That description gives a lot more for players to go off of and to start asking smart questions about how to proceed. And we're going to scroll through this quick, but this is the GM section. Reward smart plans. 100%. 100%. Players who think off their character sheet, always reward them. Keep time records. I think this is important. This is about pacing, resources. You know where people are. And then edit the rules. I will say this to the cows come home. The rules are there as a love language between you and your party. And if that language isn't working, change it. Just change the rule. Canon it for that session, that full adventure, whatever it is you need to do. Maybe you want it more deadly. You want all crit damage to be maxed. You get the point. But this was awesome. I started highlighting it, and I got to the next page. And this is the player's duties. And I think this should be printed and handed to almost every player at every game you play. And maybe some of these can change based on what type of game you're going to run. Like if I'm running Aliens, there's probably going to be some other things in here about leaning into the scheme of horror. But this one sheet, every single player should have at the table. It's almost a mantra. Assist the game master, show up on time, bring snacks, learn the rules. I cannot highlight this enough. Learn the rules. Keep session notes. Draw maps. Be ready for your turn. This stuff's important. It makes the game go faster for everyone around you. Create a character. Work within the confines of what you and the group have decided to play. Play your character. You can do a voice, not do a voice. Doesn't matter. Just play your character. Have some notes. I have something called a moral compass I did back when I was doing my EFP podcast. I did something about the moral compass on a note card and what it is. Maybe I'll do a video on that one. It's better than doing alignment, I believe, because everyone has more of a moral compass in real life than they do in alignment, and I think it helps. Ask questions. Your GM wants you to ask questions. Information is the lifeblood of the game, and I think that is true for every game. Ollie is a prime example in my shows of somebody who always asks questions. And those questions lead to better story because you're unraveling things that weren't going to be unraveled unless you did that. Scrolling back up here, apply tactical affinity. This is smart. Treat the game world as if it's real world. And by that, it means you're looking to take advantage of things, right? You want flavor. You're simulating. And I don't like true simulationist games much anymore. I think that true simulationist is great for some modern stuff, but after that, it gets a little hazy for me. I want more stuff. Scheme, think literally, not linearly. I agree. Or laterally, not linearly. You want to think about what's next and what you can achieve next and what your steps for the next thing is. If you know you're after a bad guy and he's burned a village down, you should go to that village, look for information, not go to that village, look for information, and then throw a masquerade ball, which has nothing to do with any of the shit that's going on. Fight dirty. This is cool. I didn't highlight this one, but it's very cool. Try to win fights before they begin. Be smart. Don't be D-Bart. If you know what that is, you know. But play smart. Set up traps. Set up ambushes. Try to talk your way out of it. Get them arrested instead of fighting them. That stuff makes for memorable moments versus roll initiative in the slog of combat. Because the less you do combat, and when combat happens, it becomes more memorable. It serves fucking purpose. You know what I'm saying? Those pages are awesome. But prepare to die. There is a piece in Jason Bullman's, oh man, what is his zombie game called? I can't remember the name of it now, but when you die, in the bottom of your bag, there are memories, like pieces and mementos. And you as a player kind of tell your player story as they go through your bag to get your gear to survive in this Hope Finder. Hope Finder. That's what it was. To survive in the zombie apocalypse. I love that. I think that's a really cool concept for any game because players always go through people's gear when they die. And I think that works well. So that's just those 2 pages. We get into ability scores, character creation all on one page, which is really clean, right? Like you know what the scores are and how to make your character. And it says roll or pick 2 careers. And this is when we start to get into his master amazing D100 tables. And I know a D100 table sounds easy to make, but anyone who's done game design, to make a good table, it is not easy. And to make one that is functioning, that makes your GM and players want to use them, is way more difficult than you think. And this does it. And this is just a bunch of careers, and it tells you kind of what you get and you roll too. Like, for example, let's get 2 D100s in the audience. Let's just see what we get. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go over the next page and we'll come back to it. He talks about item slots and wounds. I talked about that in the beginning here. But basically, you have 10 plus your Conn's item slots to record your gear. When you take damage, you receive... we subtract from your hit points. Once HP reaches 0, each point of damage fills an item slot with an appropriate wound. Stabbed, frozen, burned, so on. So if you go down and I hit you with a greatsword, I cleave your hand, it says cleaved hand. And it goes from the highest slot to the lowest. Items in the wound slot must be dropped, right? Really cool. Direct damage, death, healing and how it works, and then leveling with experience points. And here's your experience points, and they give you like generic titles. Like let's be honest, you can use whatever titles you want, but those are the generic ones that are there. So it looks like our first 2 rolls were a 70 and a 34. So let's say our character is a pilgrim. They come with a staff, a relic, a letter, and a passage of a letter of passage. Letter of passage. Ooh, that could be really cool. And then 34. They are also a fence, short sword, file, sealing wax. So they're a pilgrim traveling, but they also fence goods, probably of the dead they found, people who've died around them, and so on. Clean. I think that's better than Bond's ideals and flaws. It's also why I liked it in Shadow of the Demon Lord. Leveling up, pretty clean. Tell you how experience work. Basically, PCs are awarded 1 experience point for each coin. Now, a lot of people have talked about not liking Treasures XP, and I was one of those people for a long time. And then I had to track XP through doing CRs for 3.0 on up, and I hated it. I don't think that making monsters worth experience points like a video game is a great way to get your players to interact with your world. It's just not. All they do is kill stuff and move on. They don't even want to interact. But experience for treasure, the risk of treasure. And I also include things like information and boons and things like that. I think that makes you RP more personally, than killing monsters. Maybe killing monsters makes sense if you're a bunch of monster hunters. That's different. But if you're adventurers, the idea of getting hired by the local town guard to hunt down a group of thieves that have been stealing from everyone in the town, only to find out that their den is in the actual, let's say the guard's like forgotten tower, and you recover the items that are there and you get experience for that. Or vice versa, a wagon gets toppled, a bunch of people's stuff is stolen, you either return it to people or you keep it for yourself. Either way, the amount of stuff that you brought back for yourself or for those people is XP, and that works way better to me than combat does in giving you experience. Checks. He talks about making checks, how they work, how to set a target number, reversing checks, which is cool. But the coolest part on here for me was social checks, and I'm a big proprietor of this. In most cases, the outcome of social interactions can be resolved with common sense and role-playing, but in a risky situation, you may call for a check. I will let a role-play session of someone role-playing with somebody else, if they're not hostile specifically, I'll let them role-play it out, and if it's good, if that character's a person who would believe in that shit, then let them. That's why making your NPCs early is important. They have lore checks, search checks, all that stuff. Rules on travel. There's a gentleman who did a really cool video on traveling. I love this. Watch, travel speed, navigation, exploration, secret features. You should always design secret features for travel. This is important. When people are, if you are traveling from point A to point B to point C, I call it the journey in my games, the way I'm doing my exploration for a couple of my games for my system. And if the journey is short, there should be like one thing that happens. And if the journey is longer, maybe two things should happen. But I don't roll random encounters for those. I have maybe a table of random encounters that all tie into the scenario, the thing I'm doing. I may have the idea of moving mechanics in the back end, but I think secret features are important. The next, travel, hazard die. This is a mechanic they've added in. The hazard die is really important. The hazard die is a die that you roll to determine what kind of thing happens, or if you start getting tired, if something is depleted. It's very clean. The hazard die comes from somewhere else. I know he references it, but I add this to most of my games now. And a lot of times I roll and I don't tell the players, or if things are getting slow, I'm like, well, you guys know what time it is. You need to find out, with all this time that's passed, what's happened. And you have them roll that travel die. Random weather. They have the weather tables down here, how they work, but notice there's no stats. You could use this for anything. Yes, Rouge. Yes, that is true. Hazard die. There's a hazard and you die. That is possible. That is possible. You'll see shifts. What happens during the shifts? Really easy. As a GM, if you get stuck in things, you could roll out like 3 of these and just put them on the sidebar of your sheet, and then have them for when you need to describe something without stopping to roll. You could just have that it is a 30, I'm just gonna say 31 and 62. A 31 is that there are fireflies currently, and 62 is that there is misty rain. Perfect. And if you happen to be in winter during that, that could be a weird element. Pretty fun stuff there. Then signs, locations, and look at these things. I'm going to say 12 and 14. 12 is there's a hazard, and you click page 17. Look, it goes to it. Drink. Hyperlink works. But you go to hazards, and then what did I say? What was that? 14, 12, and 14, I'll say. Cave. There's a hazard, and you're in a cave. And then when you go to hazards, there's special pieces. You can talk about structures that are. I'm going to say 65. 65 is paved roads are in this area. Then we'll say, what is the place's traits? I'm going to say 22. 22 is it's desolate. This is a desolate cave that for some reason has paved roads to it. Maybe it was a mine, something along those lines. And then you go through and you go into the next part, which is about delving. Right? Delving, it's about going into more than dungeons in my eyes, but in this game it's dungeons, but it's about going into cities and handling things, maybe into an inn, anywhere where danger could happen, where it's dark and unknown. And then a dungeon hazard die. He has a hazard die for this as well, and you roll for what could happen. You'll see there's a whole bunch of different things like crawling speed, how quick you are doing it crawling, walking, running, candles do, and light's important in games, and I've noticed over the last year, a lot more people see light being very important. Then you got your delve shifts. And again, these are random things for your delve shifts, like what happens. So like, let's say 81. 81. Rooms rearrange while you're sleeping. Little delicious in dungeon there for some people. And then we'll say, we said 81, let's do 94. And then 94 is a torture room. They rearrange, you open the door and you open to a torture room. Now we're playing the cube. The room details, I'll say 17. The room details of 17 are carvings. And then what's this part? Room themes. We'll do 41. I'm looking away so I don't cheat. There's an invention. So the rooms rearrange. It's a torture room. We know that there are some special torture elements in there, and then we've rolled these extra 2 pieces that get added. Dungeons, traps effects. I love trap effects. I think trap effects are the things that GMs get hooked up on the most, and you should always warn of danger. Warning of danger is important. So if we have like a 19 and the 19 for the trap is compressing, there should be like blood or something on the walls or clothes stuck into the mortar with bone pushed into it. And they're like, how is this possible? There's got to be something here. And that gives the idea of a compression trap. Then you got hazards, which we pulled up with our hyperlink earlier. And then mechanisms. Mechanisms are just how they work. So we had that trap that was compression, and I rolled a 59. And the 59 was... it's compression, and there's a plug. Maybe there's a plug there to drain everything that was compressed out. Like they compress it and it all gets pushed through this one hole like a straw. These are just easy. It's easy. Also great art. I love this black and white art. Encounters. Talks about encounters. The distance from the party. I think that's important. A lot of games have been bringing that back from the old school days. I love surprise. This is my favorite surprise I've seen in a while. If encounters within 80 of the party, the closest PC makes a wisdom check against the wisdom of the closest encountered creature. Doesn't mean it's negative, just somebody you're encountering. They could be a traveling caravan, who fucking knows. The surprising side will act first in combat and gains a +5 to all combat checks. That's huge. Pretty cool in a D20 game. Reaction, and then you'll see activities that this encounter party could be doing. Which if you can either have one planned, pick one for the chart, or pre-roll the fucking thing. Combat, attacks, maneuvers, ranged, sneaks, melee attacks against unsuspecting foes that always hit. It's not a class feature. It's just something the players can do. If you want to play a sneaky style rogue, fucking use that rule. This is your bread and butter. This is genius. You want power attack? You can. So instead of being stuck behind a class, it's something anyone can do who's playing smart. Hazards, how they function. Again, we get into spellcasting. Like I said, there are spell books. Each slot in your inventory takes a spell book. Chaos spell book change their spells every time. And look, we're about to flip to what is, I think, one of the most creative pieces in here, which is randomizing spells. And I don't mean some old wild magic. I mean crafting new spells and alchemy. And when I got to this, I stopped highlighting because I was like, this book needs to be at every table. It needs to be at every table. It needs to be every table for making this kind of stuff when you hit that wall as a player or a GM where you just can't think of anything. Look at this, everybody. There are 100 spells in the book, and they're clean and simple. Animal friendship. Int, animals, obey your orders as well as a trained dog for 1 day. It's easy. It's intelligence based. You want to make it a cleric instead of this? You could. Just change it to wisdom. It doesn't fucking matter. There's 100 of them. Knock, int, locks, unlocks. Pretty easy, right? Elemental wall creates a wall of ice or fire. Easy. And they have some weird ones. Increased gravity. An invisible tether, right? Then you get into, after this 100 of spells, and this awesome art. Again, this little shit here, man. He should be in every book, right? He's earned it. I feel like he's earned it. Little bastard is so ugly. He's great. There is the generating new spells, and this is one of the most creative things. And I was talking to Danny Grimes about First Edition, and I had ways to randomly create spells. But to boil down one of the most complex systems in almost every TTRPG into these tables is the best reverse engineering I've seen in a long time. So he has an example here, and I'll leave this up for anybody who wants to read it. I'll kind of scroll up. But there is a formula below where you roll d12s to create items. Who knows? Could be a thread, could be a tether. Who knows? It could be if you're playing something gory, it could be a skin thread or organs. If it's something fantasy oriented, it could be a thimble and thread that you carry and you stitch it into their clothes and you cast a spell. Depends on the game. But the way this works is you roll a spell formula, and it's, if you roll a 12, it's wizard's name, quality, effect, element, way up there, which is cool to me. I love that they decided to do that. And you roll a wizard name. So I'm gonna do an 8. I'm gonna do a wizard name, effect. Yeah, wizard name, effect, and what is it? Effect and form. So I need 3 people to roll D100s, and I'm going to show you how this works in real time. And this is the core of the tables in general. I think this summarizes all of Ben's work for his tables and how elegant they are. So we need 3 people to roll D100s. See what we get here. I kind of want to roll one too. Maybe I'll do the 4-1. I'm going to do the 4-1 because I want to roll the last one. I want to roll something too. No, I'll roll in chat. I'll roll here. I got some cool dice I haven't got to roll in a while. They have, I don't know if you can see this, but they have like little boats in them. Little origami boats. So I got an 86 for the last item. So what's the first one? First one we have is a 63. 63. So 63 is Panderball. Okay? Panderball. So I put that down. What's the next one? That was Panderball. What's our next one here? A 4. So Panderball. Let's go to the next table. We are doing the last one, so we have quality. 4. It is ancestral. Panderballs. So it'd be Panderballs, ancestral. Okay. Well, let's see what we get after ancestral. We got a 40. Panderballs, ancestral. Expanding. And I rolled an 83. Expanding. And I have an 83 under element. Expanding steam. Done. There's your spell. We just made a spell. And with the rules that are here, we can make out what's needed for bonuses. And they even have like weird mutations and delusions and all these extra pieces that you can add in to your your rolls, or if you just want mutant powers for a game because someone drank a potion, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just available. And it's so clean. You could pre-roll spells and hand out books. There's disasters, magic schools. And now you're going to see what I'm saying every game. You could bring this to any table, short of maybe high sci-fi. Ben, you can make sci-fi tables, buddy. But you can bring any of these. Oh, and look, there's another hyperlink. 40 brings you to books. Drink again. So the way it works after that, let me kind of pan back here. You got relic magic. These are more like patron boons. There are shrines and religious sites. He's really broken stuff down. There's blessings, favor and disfavor. And then you get your domains. And these are like god domains. And the symbol for them. So if you ever want to make a symbol, roll 2 of these and you get symbol. It could be like bow and skull. Bow and skull sounds like a Victorian hunting store. Tell me it doesn't. Bow and skull, your local hunting store. I might have to use that in ETHUANTIA. More art. And then alchemy. So Kelly, if you're watching this later, you want to come up with alchemy potions for Dragonbane in the game we're playing, here's your tables. Here's your ideas. They even have brewing rules. They're clean and simple. They have harvesting in it and what you got to harvest to do them. And then they got random rolls. So again, if we get like a 40 and a 18. So it's 40 is intangibility. 18 is it's creamy. Let's do a 20. So 20 is chive flavored because the flavor of it. And then you can roll your colors like eggshell and saffron. And the ingredients could be like, I'm going to say there's 2 ingredients for this potion because it's important. I'm going to say 99 and 81. We have star metal and wolf's bane are the 2 ingredients you need to make it. Right? Welcome to Erik's Bow and Skull. If you want a weapon, we've got them all. That is very good. And what we don't tell them is it's from all the PCs that have died and are brought back into town. That's where all this stuff comes from. So, really clean table usage. Is equipment, again, clean. Talks about what equipment is, where you can get it. Coinage is probably the biggest change in here as well, and how coinage works. Prices are all in copper, or in coins, not in copper, in coins. Right? I think it's a skull arrowhead with a bow. And then they have random tools that you roll. And you're like, well, what are the stats for these? How do they work? Well, the stats are all in these blocks, and then you just roll for what they look like to give it flavor. It's really cleaned. It's simple. Your books are great. This is also something like, if you are running a Skyrim game, this is your generator for your fucking books. Like right here. Oh, I got one, anatomy on the prayers. Anatomy on prayers. Okay. Different fabric, different decorations, different treasures, different materials that things are made out of. I also think that in your world, you should always have your own materials table for what things are made out of. I have one for ETHUANTIA. It makes your life easier. It doesn't have to be D100. Maybe you only have 20 unique things, but it's pretty cool. Unique weapons, like a bill hook. I love bill hooks. They're one of my favorite things to use in games. Item trait. It's extra planar. And you make something from it. And then we get into buildings. I feel that tabletop RPGs miss how to do city stuff too often. There are games out there that are perfect, like Tolus does a really good job for Monty Cook Games. Lockmore was a really good city. But buildings and how to run them and what to do, a lot of that's left out, or the system does it and they overcomplicate the living fuck out of it. It is so complicated that you can't accomplish anything. It takes too long. And then this comes along. So in, I think, 2nd edition, there was a world book that came out that came with a bunch of different types of graph paper and how to make your own world from D&D, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and they also had stuff for doing cities. Look at how easy this is. Bring in D10 percentage of the cost each year in profit. How to rent. Common rooms, private building. 1% of its value per month. Buying building. Costs. Construction. Room style. Cost. Done. You can expand upon it on your own. Go to those other table and roll fabrics and information and stuff like that and make what you need. He's got warfare. This has warfare, but Spelljammer couldn't get ship combat. But this gentleman in 88 pages also got warfare in here. And just think about that for a minute. How? How was a game called Spelljammer not... How does it not have spaceship combat in it? But this gentleman has put together an entire book with warfare in it. And the warfare is super fun, and it's clean. I think you could have some really good moments with it, and it'd be easy to expand upon. That's my hot take, but I think it's true. And he breaks down how to do it and what's involved. And then he has city themes. City themes, events. And I will say, things like Shadow Dark could also use this. In Shadow Dark, there's entire tables for building adventures, which I'm going to do a live one day and build an adventure at the tables in there. And I think I'm going to use some of this as well, because I have some solo gaming stuff coming up. And this is perfect for that. Street details. No one thinks about this. Another hyperlink. Back to activities for everybody. Super simple. And then on top of that, there's one for animals. Here's all your animals. More hyperlinks. But it takes you directly to what you need. Directly what you need. And it's a thin book. I just bookmarked all mine. So that's 2 more. And there's hyperlinks all through this. Look at this. Anything that's important is italics and hyperlinked. If you're drinking shots, it's a lot of shots. Enjoy your shots. But it makes me excited to see. Names. Name generator. Todd, my buddy Todd, found one of the best name generators ever. And it's the hipster business name generator. And we used it when we did ETHUANTIA. And this is his version of that. And it's great. Welcome to the Dead 7. And you just spin on it. Just so nice. So nice. And I don't think that you need like a book of tables for every game you play. But I think when you're in the middle of a session or you're prepping and you're like, oh, I know we're going to go to this cart because this guy sells food. Even though the goal is just to get information, I know that Allie's going to ask what they're selling to eat. And I'm going to need something. And I can be like, oh yeah, they have a diced soup. They're little gel soups that you put in hot water while you're traveling so you can warm up and have soup on the go on the road. See how easy that was? Now, granted, I'm expanding upon this, but I think anyone could do it. And if you can't do it quickly, you could write it down and go, what would diced soup be? Well, that's like bouillon cubes. I guess basically you'd be like bouillon. This guy just sells the gel from cooking down stock. That's perfect. Now those little flavorful pieces, pun intended, become something your players remember in the game. And that's the things that GMs miss a lot because they're so worried about the mechanics of the game. They're so worried about getting everything right. They're so worried about knowing every rule. And this takes some of that work out, especially for new GMs or for GMs that have been running so long they just feel like they've been doing the same thing forever. I think it's very important. Different factions, faction traits, what they're known for. Like, how great is it to roll cult fanatics and they are eloquent? They're cult fanatics that are eloquent, and they're probably eloquent about, like, poetry. But they're really bards that make new poetry to charm entire theocracies into doing what they want. Well, I can see you got real close here. Almost didn't fit it. New missions, new rewards. There is a book from D&D 5e that was Ravnica. It's probably one of the best and most underrated books done by 5e because it has guild jobs. And this kind of resembles how you could do guild jobs for any game. Super clean. Super fun. Always doing something new. Downtime and carousing. So we're gonna flash back for a second here, okay? Shadow Dark came out, and I saw the carousing table, and my brain immediately went, wow, you could make some really epic RP moments using carousing. Why isn't this in more games? And it was around a while ago, and they brought it back in things in OSR. It's always kind of been around, but they've modified it, made it better. And in a game where you're using gold, or in this game, coins, to determine if you level or not, you use carousing to carouse with people to gain more experience, to level more, to get better at what you do. So carousing takes up a whole night and costs the PCs D10 times 50 coin in villages, D10 times 100 in towns, times 200 in cities. It also grants PCs experience equal to the amount spent. So instead of your players trying to buy gold, they're buying times out, leveling up, tearing up their personalities, tearing up who they are. And he's got a nice little breakdown for the things you can do. And I will say Shadow Dark has an even bigger table for how to do carousing. And I'm telling you, I'm going to start a show that's carousing, because I think this might be the only good way to do a live episode that shopping is involved, if it makes sense. It's something to get experience and learn. And the goal behind it isn't a new piece of gear. It's experience to be a better character. It works. They even have recruiting. This doesn't happen enough in 5e. I feel like a lot of games overlook recruiting and bringing people with you. It's an old school style. For those of us who played in the 80s and 90s, you know, having a cow with you or a goat to walk through to trigger traps, or hiring a henchman to carry your gear so you could carry the things that were important. They could carry the stuff that you're looting. Having a cart. Those things were important. It died out after a while. It's been brought back, and I like how it's done in almost... I will say MCDM has done a good job with it, with hirelings. We use that in our Dragonlance game. If you haven't watched the Dragonlance stuff, it's probably... I'll link it up here somewhere, but it was like 20-something episodes. And we had hirelings in those games that did stuff for them, so that instead of a player running across the city to go do things, you sent the hireling. It worked really well. And I think that's something that we're missing in a lot of new games right now. I think that we should allow players to have them, but maybe they shouldn't always be in combat. And they're fun. They're fun to have. It's somewhere to put your money as a player. Names, surnames, we're just going to scroll, personalities, NPC details, professions, goals. How many players do you know can't come up with a goal for their character? How many GMs do you know don't know what an NPC wants? Tables like this help. And roll them before. Because if you're not good at improving, rolling before means you have this little box with the NPC's name, Reginald the Bad, and you roll his thing of 34. He wants to cripple a faction. You're like, oh, there's a faction in the game. They're working with the faction. Tie them together. Boom. Story is made. That helps. Assets. A demigod. Owns a manor. Whatever. Liabilities. Arthritis is up there. I just watched, what was that horrible fucking horror movie? Stop Motion. There's a person with horrible arthritis in that. The movie was not good, visually cool, not a great movie. Not even a good B flick. I wanted Puppet Master out of it. But anyway. More. Oh, look, you roll spell. Hey, shoot, I need spells. Where's that at in the book? Click hyperlink. Problem solved. Relationships. We know Adam's going to love relationships. Mannerisms. And this lets a GM improv too in a way that they don't know how. Normally. A lot of GMs that don't know how. And then, so this is cool. You all know that have been here for a lot of my stuff. I am a big monster fan. I ran Warpaint. We built kaiju during that show. We built robots during that show. Mechas. I love monsters in general. I think they're the heart of a lot of my games, maybe not even combat. In ETHUANTIA, we're dealing with cryptids, and ghosts are going to be a huge part of this season. And I think that people overlook monsters as story too often, and they only use them as combat. And this is a really cool concept, and there's one line in here that I want to show more than anything else. Creating a monster. Use the following tables to generate ideas for monsters, or just use the monster from old school RPGs. Beastiary on the next page provides some samples. If you have to come up with the monster stats quickly, just use ones for owlbears. I'm not going to say this, but I have used owlbears stats for monsters more than I can remember. The sweet, sweet irony of them mentioning owlbears. And it's because they just have the perfect amount of attacks for stuff. And they have the perfect amount of hit points for being a big bad. Genius. Talk about stats, armor class, hit points, level, attacks, movement, morale, and then number appearing. Thanks, AW. And then monsters, different styles. You want to roll one up and make one. This doesn't need to be here though. And then they have a Beastiary. And Beastiary, so for those who watched Delicious in Dungeon lately, it's probably one of my favorite parallels to D&D, a good D&D game. Animated armor, AC 18, hit points 24, level 6, attack weapon D8, move 20, morale 12, and then what is NA? Number appearing D6. Immune to mental effects, dark vision, held together by Magic Lord. Boom, done. That's it. That's all there is. And they just, I don't know, they just nailed it. They nailed the concept of it. And then they have a whole bunch of stat blocks. No art there, by the way. They saved by not putting art in there. You can use your own art for it. Then they get into your animals and organs. Organs? Pieces from monsters? Like, I need this for the show I'm running on ETHUANTIA right now. I'm going to say 74. It's got shaggy hair. My shaggy hair is super durable. It's longer than normal. You're able to make compound bows and bows for bowstrings for like crossbows. Maybe the crossbow can only be used for heavy, and maybe the compound bows is... Maybe the compound bows are... You have to have a strength 13, but you can use D6 extra damage. Super clean. You can just take drinks, by the way, from your drink. You don't have to do shots. You can just take drinks. So, monster traits, what they are, powers, like, it's super clean. Again, look at this. Ready? I'm not going to count them, but you can see them all. Look at all these hyperlinks. Just saying. So, scenes. How to make a scene. The sounds you would hear in areas. The tactics. The weakness of creatures or something. And then, after all of this, we are 74 pages in. He gives an example of play. Really clean. Goes through. Like, this is the GM's guide that has been missing from a lot of things over the years. And it's digestible. 70 pages to read, 77 pages to read isn't bad. And then again, Ben goes through here and gives really good designer's commentary. What the goal of Knave was and why. He talks about why random tables is much is often made of whether a game's rules are good. But in my view, the actual content of the game, situations, the locations, the events, the NPCs, often has a bigger effect on the experience than mechanics. Knave's random tables, which expand upon the tables from my previous game Maze Rats, aim to make creating game monsters as fast and even entertaining process that makes the world feel surprising and alive. I can't build the world for the GM, but I can at least provide all the pieces to do so. Every single GM needs this. Every single GM. I think that this is something that has been missing. I love his concept of layout. I fully believe this, anyone who's seen any of my layout work and what I do. Knave uses control panel layout, which keeps most topics combined to a single page or a 2-page spread. And that's smart. GMs can print the rules as reference and spreads out the information and trying to find it. But 2-page spreads come back to magazine timeframes to me, making magazines, and how big 2-page splashes were important. Free League crushes on this really well. Mork Board crushes on this really well. And he's brought that idea again to life here, just like Shadow Dark does. It's easy to digest those 2 pages. You can read 4, put it away, come back to it, and you don't feel like you're lost in the sauce. And then he broke down how to game master and player duties. This is something that is missing in almost every book that comes out. they'll give you the GM's job and they'll tell you what players do, but they don't tell you what you are responsible for doing this to make the game run properly. Ability scores, breakdown's really simple. Classlessness. Knave has no classes, allowing players to determine their PC's niche by the abilities they improve and the gear they carry. Very gear dependent, making you who you are because you carry spell books or great swords or whatever. And then his inspirations. First off, Into the Odd by Chris McDowell. GURPS by Steve Jackson. GURPS is old school. Into the Odd's amazing. Bastion Land, which I really am in love with right now. Mythic Bastion Land is all about knights. Same guy. Some of the best new design out there. And then why he did careers, why he did wounds and item slots. Like he gives you the internal monologue. And I would love to ask him, did he write these after? Did he write this stuff during? Did he write this first and then make the game? I kind of wonder how these couple pages came to be. Travel talks about hex crawls. I think hex crawls can be really good if they're done right and you have the right person running them. I've run them successfully many times. They are a little hard for gamers who grew up on 5e to grok and get their head around. But if you look at them more as play spaces, hex spaces to play in, I think Mutineer Zero did a good job with it. Instead of looking at like something has to happen at every hex, it's more about how many things you want to have happen along the travel. And in Mythic Bastion Lands, he talks about a hex being a unit of measurement, which is a 6-mile hex. Pretty cool. Delve, how that works, encounters, combat, and he breaks it all down. And then we get into, after his concepts, the character sheet. I'm going to zoom out so you can see this. This is the character sheet. That's it. You look. That's it. It's circles, some squares, and some. And I love the tracking your hit points here. This here, genius. Look at, breaks down what's in each one of your pieces here. Each one of your little stat blocks are broke down. Every single one of them are broken down. And I think that that is something that is missing a lot of times. I think that your Apocalypse World games do it really well. He's got a cool little isometric dungeon, one of my favorites. I love ISOs. He has a hex map for you to use if you want. And then he's got the last 2 pages of the book, which has got travel, delving, hyperlinks to where they are in the book, and encounters. And I love that they are hyperlinks with page numbers, because then if you want to type the page number in or write the page numbers down while you're looking at encounters, you can make notes. I'm a big fan of when you are digesting a new system, writing down things that seem important to you as you're reading them and writing the page numbers. And this helps a lot with that process. And then that's the back of the book. So this entire book is 88 pages. We went over in roughly an hour, if we cut out our chatter at the beginning of the show. And it's just clean. It's just clean. So I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to record a quick section of kind of what I want this to be. I need to test something here. Okay, we just got move transitions. All right. Let me turn on transition. That's the fade. I want the Rodian transition. Is it always going to do it now? Yeah, it does. Okay, we'll just keep it this way then. With the moves. There should be a move transition, but it's just doing fade for some reason. I guess I never set up the move transition. My right hand thing is using it, but this one isn't. I'm going to try something real quick. We're going to just do a move transition. Move EFP live. I'm going to put, hopefully it doesn't crash every while I'm doing this. All the same. And we want ease in and out, cubic, appearing items, ease in and out, matched items, fine. Nothing happens to them. Appearing items, I want them to come from top right. And then disappearing, I want them to go to bottom left. Let me try this. See how it looks. Clean. 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 I like that. That's pretty clean. And anything to full screen does that. Okay, cool. So with that, we're going to go through this in a quick review of the book. And I'm going to repeat some of the stuff I said, but I'm going to really try to get this succinct and down to 15 minutes. I need different music for this, though. What music do we want for this, everybody? Before we start this recording, what do we want? Need something from White Bat, right? Ooh. Cinematic, mystery, homicide, royalty free. What is in this? Well, that's amazing. We're going to be using that on one of our new shows. That's for sure. That's for sure. Let's go with... What's this one? No. Something a little more upbeat. What's Empress? Yeah, we'll use this. That's good enough for me. We'll use this, and then I'm going to use... can't have the first 10 seconds of the video have swearing, so I can't use Laura Babick's thing. I'm going to use Leo. Anyone have any questions before I dive into this recording? Is there anything in the book that I didn't cover that you would like to see before I move into recording this? Because once I hit record, I'm not going to look at chat for like 15 minutes. Is there anything you would want? Let me go leapfrog. Actually, I could use fall in reverse. I forgot. I'm going to use falling in reverse. Videos. Let's see. I don't want anything from the Warp Tour they did. I want something I think I can get away with. Yes, I'll use this song. This is perfect. Let me get it to a point where I can pause it. I'm going to try to do this in one take. All right. So it's going to be starting soon, so I can crop this hot hook right into the breakdown for the book. I'm going to be doing some pausing in between. That should work pretty well. All right, I'm going to start recording. All right. We're going to go to pause. And I'm just going to cut from pause. Hey, everybody. Today, we're going to make this really simple. You should get Knave, and it should be at every table. And if you don't do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Let's go into why. I'm going to do one more. Oh, I forgot he swears in the beginning of this. Wait for this to start. You should have Knave at your table, and I'm going to tell you why. So we have really dove into Knave in our live show, but I want to show you why I like it. And I'm going to try to do this in 15 minutes. I'm going to start a clock for myself, as a matter of fact, and we're going to go through this the best I can, the best I know how. Knave is a new book from Ben. If you've ever watched Questing Beast and the masterful stuff that he produces over there, this is from his mind. And this is his second edition of Knave. And I got to say, I do wholeheartedly believe everyone should have this their table at home. As a player or a GM, he does something with elegant simplicity and the ability to make tables relevant to your game in a way that I haven't seen in a very long time. So if you want to pick up Knave, you can find it. I'll put some links down below. And if you have any questions that I missed during this, put some comments and I'll get back to them as soon as I can, or maybe I'll just answer them in the comments themselves. I highly recommend picking this up. I'm pretty sure you can get the PDF now. And with that said, let's kind of break this down and dive through it. So, that did not work, and it did not record, so we have to do it again. Hey everybody, this is what tech is like. I would have had it in one take there. I like character sheets, but I wish there was more space for notes. That is why you should have a notebook. Let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. I'm here to tell you why you should have Knave at your table, and that it's not a choice, it's a must. So, we're going to dive into looking at this, but a little background on Ben. The Kickstarter did well. It did over 650K. I know you can get the PDF, I believe, as of today. I'll put a link down below for it. But if you know Ben in Questing Beast, this guy has created some of the best pieces of content on the internet for tabletop RPGs. And I got the book, and I'd had the PDF since February, and I've kind of scanned through it, but not until this book was in my hand did I really understand what I had. And I feel like this is something that if you don't have it at your table, no matter what game you're playing, specifically if you have a fantasy game that you're playing, you are really crippling yourself as a GM or really as a player. So we're going to go through this really quick, and I'm going to show you everything that's here. Okay? This breakdown is clean. It is simple. The rules for the game are up to you to read. And I'm not here to tell you about the rules for the game. I'm here to tell you the rules are great, they're clean, you can run, but I'm going to tell you some of the mechanics that stand out for me and the things that you should look at to help you run your games at home or online. I will say the PDF is amazing. And why? It's hyperlinked everywhere. And you can click anything that you see a page number on hyperlink, or you can make your notes at home as a GM or player right next to your character sheet what pages things are on. Stats are ones we know. The checks are very easy. It's a D20 and ability score with modifiers. All those things are the things you already know. Initiative's a little different, and you can go through those because it uses charisma versus dexterity. It's about who's going to get the jump versus who gets the jump because they're fast. And then we're going to get into highlighted sections. Now, I did a live stream for this. You can click the link up here. That live stream is going to give you everything that you need if you want to see the big deep dive into it, how I recorded this. But he's done a few things that are very different. Let's talk damage. Item slots and damage. You only get so many item slots in this game. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take you to the character sheet just so you can see why I say that. These are your item slots. You get Conn plus so many, and this is what you can carry in the game. These act not only as your item slots, they also act as the extra damage that you take. And by extra damage, I mean kind of how you die. When you're already out of hit points in this game, you start taking damages to your inventory lines, making inventory very important. We'll touch on it a little more as we go through the book, but for 88 pages, every 2 pages are basically a spread of information that you should have. He talks about it in the back of the book and why he designed it this way, and I agree. I think it's easier to learn when all the information's on 1 page or a 2-page spread. You take that idea, you digest it, and you can move on. So he has all the core stuff here in the front of your book in these 2 pages. These here are what match these here. These 2 pages that are in the front of your book. And the same for the back of your book. These are what those match, right? And those are there to help you make things easier as you're GMing. When we move on into the other parts here, he talks about his checks, the damage, spellcasting. In this game, every spell you have takes a slot in your inventory. So since this is a classless system, surprise everybody, fantasy game with no classes, you are really itemizing what kind of character you want to play. If I want to play a wizard, I carry books. Each book gives me a spell I can cast. I can do it X amount of times a day, and that's spell casting. He breaks down relic magic, which are like boons from patrons. He talks about transportation out of the gate. black and white art, very clean through the entire book. And then we get into the actual book. Again, table of contents, one column. He gives you a good introduction. He talks about why he uses tables. And I should specify something here. I love tables. I think tables are the spark of life when you're a GM or player and you've hit a wall and you can't figure something out. Or you're running a session, but you feel like you've been running the same thing over and over again. Pre-roll some stuff on tables, write them on the side in your margin of however you take your notes, and get ready to use them in your game. And the same is for players. And he's going to talk about the duties of a GM and a player. And I feel like not a lot of games do that. Maybe LARPs, they kind of explain things from the person running in the LARP and the player's perspective and what's expected. But I don't think there's been a really good TTRPG that I can remember, because my biggest disappointments in most games is the GM's guide. That's not the case here. This book is seamlessly kind of for both sides of the screen. I highlighted the fact that he has game master duties here, from creating locations when you explore, which is important, fleshing out supporting cast, letting players guide the action. I redlined this one. I think this can be misread, and also I think you can run it your way, and that goes to his last thing, which is edit the rules. But I run a story in mind. I have a story and a plot web that I go through and I highlight the sections that the players are doing or have done or missed. I make notes on them to kind of bring them back in if I want. But I think overall, the idea of players having skin in the game is what this is about. The randomness, the surprise, everyone at the table enjoying that session. The way I design a show for live stream isn't the same as a table. And I think this helps a lot with the sandbox style, but he's giving you the dots to connect, kind of, when you read through this book. And I think that's a big part of this. And I think when you read through these game master duties, you're like, oh yeah, this is a lot of the stuff I do. It's never been put in words this way, especially on a one sheet that you just put in the front of your book. But then he does it for players. And this is important. And I want all players to read this and understand this isn't a dig. This is just the truth. Your GMs put in a ton of work when they do a game, and maybe only second to the person who made the game. And players should be doing things that are in here, like assisting the GM, learn the rules, keep session notes, draw maps, help out. It's a group of people. Don't make your GM be a computer. That's what computer games are for. Create a character, play your character. And that doesn't mean voices. It could be however you want to play it, but have some notes for yourself. I believe in a moral compass. It kind of helps you run your character. Take initiative, and that's not roll initiative. It means set goals for your character, have ideas. I ask my players for my live shows and for home, what are your goals for your character? And I'll be honest, most of the time, they don't know. You should. They don't have to be big. They could be small. I want to escape this continent before I'm caught for a murder that I'm being convicted of that I didn't do. Or I'm a wizard that's seeking power, but the last 2 spell books I've had have turned me into this old man. I'm actually 18. Those are the things that I feel like players forget. Ask questions, move the story forward. Asking questions is how you move the story forward, and your GM should be giving answers to help you with that. The GM shouldn't be hiding things. At the end of the day, they want you to figure things out. That's my belief anyway. Knave talks about that, how to apply tactical infinity, schemes, fight dirty, aka be ready before combat happens. Maybe you can stop it by getting them arrested, by collapsing a cliff they're all standing on. That kind of stuff. Prepare to die. Look, let's be real. In some of these older games, death is definitely more of an option. In a Knave, dying is something that will happen to somebody in your party. But it will also happen in other games you play. And I think that Knave is preparing you for those moments where maybe you didn't want that character to die, but it's going to happen. So have another character in mind, maybe a relative. Have something in his backpack that people can find. Have a note to the party ready to go. Have that moment ready. Or maybe change the rules here in this game and make it so that you go out in a blaze of glory. Whatever makes your character memorable for you, for the table, and for the story that your group is crafting together. He breaks down ability scores and player creation on the same page. And then careers. This is kind of like the replacement for backgrounds in 5e. If you're a 5e fan, you roll 2 and they give you an idea of what they do. If you watched the live show, you know we rolled once and it was a fencer pilgrim, but you could be a beekeeper and a miner. And maybe that beekeeper, you have honey, a mask, a smoke bomb, and the miner is a pickaxe, a lantern, and a pet canary. And the bees that you keep are kept outside. You live in the mines because you know there's a bear there and there's some weird hunting relationship between the two. Or you live in the cave because the bees are deadly and it's the only way to stay away from them because they won't chase you into there when you aggravate them. Maybe they're special bees. Maybe they only exist in caves. Maybe they're gem bees. You can make something up, but these careers together give you a jumping off point. Instead of just going, I'm a fighter. What's your goals? Fight-tory things? I don't like that. And this kind of fixes it. I talked about item slots and wounds. Very cool concept. It's very native to this game. I've seen some other things do similar stuff, but you should think about items being important. And this game makes items important. They are basically what comprises your player character into a character, into a class. And he talks about damage and how it works with only so many slots. When you take damage and you take stuff that goes through, or you start taking wounds when you're down, you drop items and you put a wound in that slot, like frozen, missing hand, missing finger, bruised ribs, and you start filling things out. We've seen stuff like this in Blades in the Dark, for example. It's cool to see it in a D20 game as well. Talks about direct damage. We all know what that is. It's stuff that gets you killed. And leveling up in this game, experience is through treasure. And I hear everybody. I hear everybody and I hear what you're saying, and you're going, why would I want to use currency as experience? I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier. Combat forces experience, right? Combat and experience is D&D and 5e. And if that's how you gain experience, majority, I know there's other ways, don't try to correct me down below. That is how you build an encounter in 5e and many other games. And if that's how you build it, your players are only going to aim for combat. Now, if you use treasure as experience, and this is an old way of thinking, this isn't new. Treasure as experience changes things. When you do treasure as experience, your players start looking at everything, not just for gold value, but XP. Helping retrieve someone's cart full of goods gives them the decision of keeping the goods for themselves, getting XP and keeping the gold, or giving it back to the guy, maybe forever getting a discount on this man's merchandise. You didn't know he's a magical item vendor. He sold out of all of it. All that was in there was blueprints and tools, but he needs them because he makes these items. Or maybe it is a library that is burning to the ground. You put it out and you get new spell books out of it. That idea of helping those people, the treasure rewards players. That's what players are looking for, which gives them experience, and the cycle continues. It's like recycling. Everyone should be doing it, but we don't. It works really well for this, and I think really try gold as XP once in your game. I think your idea will change if you run it as a way for players to look at the world through the lens of being better as a character and what they can do to get better. Boons from kings and patrons and things like that are worth a gold piece value, and not just combat. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't think so, though. So as we go through, he talks about checks. The only thing I highlighted here is I love the social checks. Basically, in most cases, if it's smart roleplay, there's no roll. If it's risky, roll. And I think that should be true. I think if a player gives you a great reason to not have conflict and they can talk their way through it and it's a fun time and everyone at the table's in on it, let it ride. That's enjoyable. Don't have them do all that stuff and then roll persuasion, or roll the lie, and then the whole thing gets fucked up. Just go with it. It's going to have more fun. Travel. There's a gentleman who did a really cool video on travel that's similar to how my new journey mechanic is being put together. I'll have to find it and link it below as well. But the journey mechanic is something that I think is great. And here he talks about travel in one page, and it is important. Every time you've watched Legend of the Five Rings, or you watch Lord of the Rings, or you watch Indiana Jones, or you watch even a slasher movie, a lot of it's travel. Those open vistas and those things that happen in those downtime moments, there are some cool things you can do with it. And this talks about how watches, travel speed, navigation, exploring, and most important, which I've highlighted, secret features. This is important. I think secret features are kind of something that get overlooked. Like, GMs come up with secrets when it doesn't matter anymore. And I think secrets should be the thing that you're writing down a lot of times up front. I'm not saying you can't make more, but those hidden things are what players are looking for. Making those during travel helps. And this is really the first time we start seeing hazard dice. He credits hazard dice later in the book, but basically the concept is when something could happen and you're trying to figure out what would happen, you roll a hazard die. It's a d6. There's tables for them. This happens to be travel. And you get things like exploration, fatigue, depletion, travel, shift, sign, or flee. No effect. Or free. Sorry, free. No effect. And those just give you ideas as a GM, so you're not saying the same thing every time. You can have your players roll it if you want tension for that moment. Like they're exhausted. They need to get to the city. It's still another whole 3 days away, and you know you're going to have one more travel roll. And this travel roll is important because you got people with broken bones after fighting a dragon, or whatever it is your people fight in your games. Or maybe it's because they're out of money, they're out of food, they got robbed in the last place, and they don't have any of it, and they don't have a hunter with them. Those kind of things could be really entertaining. Or that merchant with a wagon we talked about earlier. Random weather tables, really clean, and this is where we start seeing the start of tables in this. In tables that spark ideas and don't dominate, but they spark what you're doing. And I think you should pre-roll some of these for yourself and try them. And I think it works in any game. I don't think you need to play Knave, but I do think this should sit next to you while you're running your game. Tons of different shifts in here. You can watch the live show. We rolled some live things there, and I'm just going to scroll quickly through these structures and places, and then we move into the next category, which is delving. Again, another hazard die table that you use during delving to help you come up with how you want them to go. Light is important in this game. And I personally believe if you aren't playing with a game that thinks light is important, you should. Because it changes the way your players look at their character. When everyone can see in the dark, or one person can see in the dark, no one gives a shit anymore. No one cares about darkness. It's not a fear. Now you got to use magical darkness. Try a game where darkness matters, like this, or Shadow Dark, or just say no one can see in the darkness in your game. Try it, see what happens. But in his, he does something pretty cool. And I want to go over not so much the hazard section, but the tables he gives you to help make this. So as we go through these tables, you're going to find that there are a lot of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but he talks about delve shifts, the rooms, and coming up with traps. And I think these are things that GMs, old and new, stumble over all the time. When you look at these, you got delves, rooms, you could get a cursed new faction or a cursed barracks, or you could get eruption in a shrine. Help you come up with stuff, or a shop if you're tired of them shopping. Details for the room to give the 5 senses. If you want your players to ask questions, you should always describe things in a way that makes them want to ask questions. And if you describe things well enough and they say, oh, is there anything at this picture? Now you look over it, it seems normal, but the door seems out of place. Always aim them in the direction that you want them to be if you want them to be there. Don't hide it. When they search a table and you come up with details and you find something cool, why would you hide that for yourself? Give it to your players. You want them to find it. You want them to find the carvings that are underneath the desk where the sprite that has been hiding here as a spy has been carving his days like a prison sentence under the desk of the post office that has been using him to query messages across the city. That's entertaining. But if you do that and you never give it to your players, you kind of fail. But this also is great for players when they want to make rooms and I ask them, I do this all the time to my players, well, what does your room look like? Boom, now you can now roll. Dungeons, traps and effects. This is a big one. I think traps and effects is something that GMs and players, I have a Drew right now in my live ETHUANTIA game. If you're watching this live or watching this later, he's a trapper. This is made for trapper characters. Just think about rolling the fact that it's a draining, cold bow. That's the trap that he describes and makes. So clean. We talk about encounters, how to handle them. The cool part, again, there's an NPC reaction table. I think these are important, so not all your monsters and NPCs react the same. Pre-roll it, though. Don't roll it during the game. Pre-roll so you can be prepared if you need to. Right before your session, roll through it, write it on the side of your thing, and know And then you got some lovely activities that they could be doing, like eating or singing or drinking. Combat, I'm gonna be honest with you, we all know how combat works. Every game has combat. It's a slog a lot of times. This one makes it a little more interesting. I will say the cool thing is a lot of stuff is just maneuvers, like breaking gear, tripping, pickpocketing, climbing, restraining, instead of it being class abilities. It's just something everyone can do. Be smart, figure stuff out, be creative. And then sneak attacks to everybody. That's something else I wanted to point out. Same with power attacks. So great section on page 26 on combat. It's very different. The 2-page spread is then hazards and spellcasting. And this is, I think, the creme de la creme in this game. Let's just say you're not running this. Let's just say you have this as a reference material. This has 100 random spells. I shouldn't say random. 100 spells on a table. And it has tables to build random spells. Remember Tensor's floating disc? Big B's hand? Or Big B's bitch slap if you play in some of my games. Those name spells are iconic to D&D. Why not have some of those for your game? So we scroll through this 100 pages. 100 pages. 100 different spells. 100 pages? Jeez, this guy would have like 10,000 of them. But you have things like Time Jump, you Wizard Mark, you have Vision, and they're all really clean, easy to understand spells. Also, I said this before, I'll say it again. This guy here, art of the book for me. This little guy should be on every coin in the game. And then they have generating spells. And I don't know about you, but when I have been running games and I'm trying to come up with cool, unique spell ideas, sometimes you stumble or you just remake something that already exists. And Danny Grimes, credit to him if you know who he is from Delving Wood, he showed me the first edition version of this. He started building his own. Second edition came out and Ben just kind of nailed it. So you can generate spells. It's a D12 table. You roll, and then you roll on each of these tables. That's all there is to it. If we just roll 2, like affect an element could be as simple as, let's go down to affect an element, everybody. It is a honey, because we had bees earlier, honey crown. It makes some form of honey crown. Maybe it stops your helmet from being knocked off of you. Maybe it allows you to keep your mining hat on so it doesn't fall off. And they tell you how to break down the abilities for these. But lower, they get important. Like 7+ has got the wizard's name. They even have 100 random wizard names here. But if it's your own character, like I am playing Za in a game right now, and if I make Za's dismal, expanding, darkness, and it takes the form of a song, I just made a new spell. I write up what it does, I give it a couple lines, and you're good. And he has mutations and delusions in this book. These tables are priceless. They are literally the most priceless thing in this book. And it teaches you how to make tables. Because if you think making tables are easy, read through these and realize how much work actually goes into coming up with 100 items. 100 items on a table is difficult, especially to make them sound different, but not so distinct that you have now created a problem. You've created such a specificity that the table doesn't work. It needs to be generic, but engaging. It's great. And then they have magic schools here, and then we get into relic magic. Also, their beholder, Eye Tyrant. Look, if a beholder's cast spells, wouldn't it make more sense if it was all mouths? Just saying. Not a bad idea. Relic magic is for patrons. Think of it like gods and demons and shrines giving blessings. You get into domains and symbols. Super clean. Alchemy. Make your own potions. All the stuff you need to make your smoky kobold thing that tastes like chives. Breaks down his equipment. Random tools. Books. And all these are hyperlinked as well. Like if you want to do potion recipe and you click it, it takes you back to potions. Hell, maybe everyone needs this on their phone. So as we scroll through this, and you can see all of the things that are in here. He even has building your own cities. He has a simple 1 page for warfare. Then you get into these city sections that are like city themes, events that happened. Think about your different street details, which you don't, unless you travel all the time. Nobody, I don't think a single person, thinks about the crumbling walls and the piles of rags around the goldsmith building and the glass warehouse, shattered bottles all around it. No one thinks about that. But now you do. Right? Like, that makes sense. That stuff that's missing that adds the life to your game. In names, food, everybody was asked what's on a menu. And I know people are going to look at this and go, well, I can go to random generators and do this. And you could. You could. But the way that it is put together in here lets you build, if you go to encounters, all the way through the encounter process and make what you need. Instead of having all these random tables up, these are some of the best inspirational spark tables I have seen. This in Mythic Bastion Lands and Shadow Dark, just nailing it right now. And then you got missions, rewards, some more great art, and then Downtime Carousing is such a cool concept on how to spend your money to get more XP, to become better. Entire roleplay sessions come out of this. If you watch Critical Role, when they go to a town and go to spend money, they buy magical items. But if they party and do things like this, the amount of RP that would happen versus buying another magical item at a shop. And I'm only hearkening on this because it is something everyone has had a chance of seeing a TikTok or a short of. But going and rolling on this, and the building is on fire when you wake up, or all your belongings have been stolen, or a faction hates you, here's why. That makes something special. And Shadow Dark expands on this greatly. They have recruiting. MCDM did this for 5e. OSR has been doing it forever. But the idea of people doing stuff for you so you don't have to do it. How many shows have we seen where a guy pays a street urchin or pays a page or pays somebody to go get their horse, to clean something, to go send information? And they do it because they're being paid. They don't hide it. If you pay a person, say, deliver this information, and the GM goes, it's going to take them an hour to do it, but they'll do it for you, it'll be done, and there's no question. Now, maybe that person ends up dead later in the investigation, or maybe you go to him again, he's like, I'm never doing this for you again, but you pay somebody and they do the job, because people do stuff for money. I know, right? Weird. Names, if you need them. Surnames, if you need them. Personalities, NPCs, you're getting the point here. I'm just going to scroll. I'm just going to scroll through all of it. And he breaks down monsters, how to build your own. The best line here is, if you don't know what to use, just use the owlbear stat block. I've been doing that for years. I didn't think other people did it. I thought it was just me. They have pre-made ones in here, but they have tables after this to make your own monsters. We did this for Warpaint when I was on Norse Foundry making kaiju, or transmongers, which is what they were called in my setting. Imagine if I had these tables. So, in all, this is an amazing book. And there's everything from examples of play on down. And I think the part that really kind of sealed the deal for me is the designer's commentary on why he did this. Read through it. It's a great insight into, if you question a mechanic, in a normal game, you don't know why that mechanic's there. Here, the designer goes, this is why I did it. And if you don't agree with him, he already said edit the rules. But this gives you a good idea for it. So, this is Knave for me, everybody. This is the book that I'm going to be carrying with me to conventions. This is the thing that's going to be sitting on my table. This is what I'm going to use when I'm running Dragonbane live during my Tuesday show. And then for our new Monday show, this is going to be there as well. So if you are looking for a real tool book, a real Batman belt for your games, this is it right now. There are others out there. This is clean, small, and if you want a game, it's that as well. So that is it from me here on EFP. I hope you enjoy this. If anything during this video sparked conversation, put it down below or join our Discord. You can find a link probably in the chat in the live show, which will be linked here at the end. There'll be 2 videos for you to watch and obviously a subscribe. We're trying to get to 500. But thank you so much for watching this. and watch, listen, learn, be a better gamer. Read the player's part in this book. That's what you need to do. Enjoy, everyone. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording. I went through everything one more time. A little longer than I want it. I'll chop it. I'm fine with a 30-minute video. I'll edit out some of the repetitiveness. But overall, I got what I wanted out of that. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. I won't be on any of this, but I will be on Discord, which is what I just talked about. I'm going to be doing some preparation. I'll probably be in the voice chat on Sunday. I'm going to be preparing our new Monday show. So if you're watching the live show and you got to see all this recorded, thank you for joining the live show. If you like these, I do these frequently. Same thing, there's going to be videos up. It's probably going to be for our new season of ETHUANTIA, Superstitions. And then, depending on when you're watching this, it might be our second show on Monday, which I am not going to announce here. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.